Hello everyone, this is Twinless Twin, bringing you another modern video. We're playing another Yorion deck today. This time it is Jeskai Saheeli, and the main idea behind this deck is it is a control deck that also gets value from blinking permanents. The main combos are obviously Saheeli Rai and Feldar Guardian, but also both of these cards individually combo very well with Yorion. For Saheeli Rai, if you copy Yorion, you can keep the original one, the one that's not a token, and the token can blink the original Yorion. Then, when the original Yorion comes back, it gets another trigger as well, letting you do everything over again. That means if you have something like an Omen of the Sea and an Arkham's Astrolabe in play, you get to blink each of those cards twice, just off of Saheeli Rai copying Yorion. That's an insane amount of value that a lot of decks have trouble keeping up with, and it's something that makes this deck really enticing. Obviously, Feldar Guardian also goes semi-infinite with Yorion, being able to blink each other indefinitely, once per turn, obviously. Other than that, the deck is mainly a control deck. We have 6 Path to Exile effects, 4 Path to Exile, 2 Anthenice. The main reason for that is I've been seeing a lot of Tarmogoyf recently from Jund, and that card can be pretty difficult to answer, but I think that adding the extra 2 Anthenice is going to be a pretty significant improvement to that matchup. It also cleanly removes Dark Confidant without having to Path to Exile it, and it puts less pressure on you to have other types of spot removal like Lightning Bolt for those creatures as well. Other than that, we got 4 Force Negation, very important for combo matchups and control mirrors, where it can come down to just slamming Haymaker after Haymaker, and whoever is the first one to stick wins. And having Force Negation is really helpful in allowing you to try to jam your first one without any fear of your opponent countering it and then having their own. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. So let's hop into a league. All right, we are on the draw, and let's get things on the road. All right. A very awkward hand to begin things with. Part of the idea of an 80 card deck is that Mystic Sanctuary is less likely to be in your opening hand, which is where you don't want it, and you're more likely to be able to fetch it out later. But I do not think we can keep this hand. It also doesn't have a snow permanent or snow land to enchant with on thin ice. So just all around, the only thing that actually is making me reconsider is the fact that our opponent didn't reveal a companion. Some of the main decks that don't reveal a companion nowadays in Modern are Tron, Dredge, Ad Nauseum, Humans sometimes doesn't play a companion, and all of those hands, Force of Negation is actually pretty strong against. So I actually am going to keep. It also could be, yes, exactly. So it could be Neo Brand. And the reason I kept is primarily that. Basically, Force of Negation is just so strong in all of those matchups that it's a time where you know that you actually want to mulligan to Force of Negation. And this hand is somewhat functional. While it's not exactly where you want your hands to be, the premium that Force of Negation has in that matchup outweighs the inefficiencies that hand has. Our opponent's just going to go for it. Show us the Pact of Negation. All right, they can see what we bring in. We bring in Mystical Disputes, seems solid. Ashiok seems solid if there are cards that we want to cut. Cards that are bad, definitely Helix. Um, I think cut Bolts, cut this Wall of Omens, cut Jace, cut. I think that's primarily what we want to cut. So if we were to bring these in, oh, oops, not Jace. So the reason I leave in paths is because sometimes they may just go for a Gristlebrand, and then either they wait a turn or they fail to go off, but because they didn't use Summoner's Pact, they're able to keep Gristlebrand in play. So having a bunch of answers to a Gristlebrand in that case, I think is very important, as their deck actually doesn't necessarily do a great job always of going off again, even if they draw 7, maybe even 14 cards. There's no guarantee that they'll be able to have another way to combo. It is possible that we don't want these on thin ices, though. At sorcery speed, they have a lot less flexibility, and I think I'd rather keep the Jace as just even a blue card that pitches to force is pretty tempting. Um, One more card. We could try to get them with Blood Moon. That's only really works if they have a slower hand, but it is actually pretty reasonable, I think. So we'll bring in Blood Moon. All right, definitely can't keep this if our opponent's going to keep their 7. This one we will keep, but one thing that I find is always smart to do is to at least pretend to think a little bit before you keep a hand like this, where you have the force of negation, so that your opponent maybe thinks that you've kept a hand a little bit more loosely. If you snap keep, then they're much more suspicious of you having force of negation. And of course, they're going to do their best to play around it no matter what, but sometimes you can get them to be a little bit more enthused about going for it on turn 1 when they don't have any protection for the force negation. Okay, so now we have a path. Not always the most relevant, but sometimes can interact with the opponent's combo in meaningful ways, for sure. A good draw here might be Mystical Dispute. Our opponent drawing a card with Waterlog Grove is probably a good sign. Getting to Fairy down next turn would be great if we draw a blue card, as then it means that they're not able to Veil. Okay, so let's jam to Fairy. Let's immediately minus. There's nothing that we want to save our minus for, really. I guess if we were to draw an Astrolabe next turn, then maybe we'd want that value. Morphos. Our opponent's best case scenario for them here is they go Veil of Summer and then they deploy all their spells. The preemptive Veil of Summer, while it doesn't draw you a card, is still very effective. At Okay, they just go for it naked, and we're going to be able to force here. I think it was probably pretty obvious that we had the force there, considering we did nothing in the first couple turns and then just jammed to Fairy and minus. So our opponent probably could have tried to take longer to at least have a chance of playing around that. But there's also the issue of sometimes you just have to force your opponent to have it, and letting me untap maybe risks me having more counter spells than I otherwise would have. Although again, I just don't think that it's super likely that a control player jams to Farrier if they don't have the force of negation there. So tough spot for our opponent, but we do come out ahead on the first game. So I'll see you in the next match. Welcome to the second round of this league. We are on the play. Alright, this hand's solid. Our opponent reveals Lutri. Alright, this should be a fun one. I seem to get lucky and only play against Lutri decks when I'm recording videos, but I think they definitely make for fun matchups, so no complaints there. We'll see if this is the blue-red Lutri list or the Grixis one that I believe Squat Chief had been playing recently. Because it's Lutri, it's unlikely they have a creature, so let's just go ahead and lead out on our Triome. In matchups like these, there's less consideration to wanting to have a land to cycle, as Flood is pretty much impossible. You want to hit as many land drops as possible and just continue to make impactful plays. After saying that, I probably won't draw another non-land for the rest of this game, but that's okay. At least I have my Omen of the Sea and Yorion. Path and Bolt are both not great against Lutri. Path can answer Lutri itself, and Bolt can maybe get a Planeswalker. Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Okay, we'll get to convert this Bolt. To be mana efficient, I think I'm still interested in playing Omen of the Sea here. And there are a lot of good 3-drops that we could find that we would want access to. Force of Negation, probably good enough to keep on top. We do want some action, but Force is pretty good. We don't have any blue cards, though, and if we're going to be bolting this Jace, we definitely want to remove the Jace before that has a chance to loot, as our opponent is also probably slowly realizing that removal is not great in this matchup, and they want to get rid of the removal in their hand as well. I think I'm going to bottom. We have a lot of really good draws. Saheeli is definitely one of them, I'd say. Let's bolt. Interesting if our opponent's considering forcing here. They do force. Okay. Well, we do know they don't have another force, so I think we can pretty safely path them. The question is giving them the extra land more or less valuable? I think we're gonna give them the extra free loot, but in their upkeep, so they get to see less cards, and they're less likely to draw a counter spell. But I don't want to give them an untapped land, as 4 mana can be mean something like Jace the Mind Sculptor, which I just think is pretty close to unbeatable. So far, they've only gotten islands. I wonder if they're a mono blue deck. That'd be pretty cool. That they're just mono blue singleton. Blue red. All right, it does look like this is the blue red version. Blood Moon. Well, maybe we should have fetched the planes in anticipation of the one of Blood Moon, but it's hard to anticipate the one of. Or let's tap this way. We still have access to Yorion and a bunch of things. Omen of the Sea is great at just cantripping and playing into our Yorion plan. Hopefully the Saheeli Raya is tricky for our opponent to answer. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Forked Bolt, okay. And then Lutri. So the question becomes, do we Yorion now while the shields are down for our opponent? I think that both Yorion and Blinking Omen of the Sea are pretty good, and we don't want to give them a chance to have counter spells up, or do we try to get more value? I'm a little bit tempted to get more value here, just because while we don't know exactly what our opponent could have, I think that there's a good chance we'll be able to find some good spells against them still. So we'll pass here with Remand up. I guess ideally they tap out for some type of expensive threat so that we can jam Yorion. But if they don't, then we can just wait one more turn afterwards to play Yorion with Remand back up. And the popular control line is, all right, so we're going to go ahead and play Narset out here. The popular control line is you play a spell, and then if they go to counter it, you remand your own spell. And that's pretty strong. See if we can find an Astrolabe off of this Narset. Saheeli is pretty good too. Saheeli is good because it has very strong synergy with Yorion. So the Lutri will be able to kill our Narset. Part of the strength of Lutri is just its ability to pressure planeswalkers. But then we're going to be able to play Yorion. Or they just bolt it. Okay, we're very happy with that, honestly. Because Lutri attacking us, I don't really think that them damaging or dealing enough damage without outvaluing us is a realistic outcome for them. So I think overall we're pretty safe. We draw the basic mountain. Let's go for Yorion. If they try to counter, then we remand our own Yorion. Mana leak. Right, so if they have another counter, then it's unfortunate. But basically, hopefully, this remand resolves. It does. Nice. So we just got some good value from them, and next turn we can just go for Yorion again. Our opponent stomps our face. So now I guess they have a more realistic chance of actually burning us out. So we do have to start becoming a little bit concerned about that. They're going to hit us down to 7 here. They didn't play the Bone Crusher, so I'm wondering what our opponent actually is holding. It would have made sense if they were trying to burn us out or to kill us that way that they play the Bone Crusher there. So now we're going to get to double Preordain. Looks like they may have Sinkhole here. They do. Prismatic Vessel and Path can both go to the bottom. Don't have mana to cast. Alright, we completely bricked on that. So we'll crack an Omen of the Sea on our opponent's end step to scry 2. And other than that, there is not much we can do. Still abstaining from playing the Bone Crusher Giant. I wonder if they forgot about it or what happened. This Lightning Helix would have been good if we had white mana, but we do not. I think in our upkeep we'll scry again, as we're under some pretty serious pressure to find something. Narset's not bad. Let's lead on Saheeli. Plus Saheeli. Remand to the bottom. Narset. Alright, our opponent has Venser, and that is game. Game number 1. Alright, so we got burned out. Did not expect that to happen, but it did. And we'll have to be more careful about fetching our basics next time, as I think that if we had access to white mana, being able to cast Lightning Helix or Teferi, any of those spells would have all been very impactful in that game. So, a good lesson there. We do have 3 Mystical Dispute to bring in. Cards that we do not want. Still probably don't want Helix. And probably don't want some number of Path to Exiles as it ramps the opponent. Let's try this. Ashiok seems reasonable, actually. But I don't think we want to go too low on removal. And we haven't really seen any major graveyard synergies. I'm expecting they probably play the one of Snapcaster Mage. It would make Magmatic Sinkhole worse. It would stop fetch lands, but that's about it, and I'm not really sure if that's worth it. Jeskai doesn't have any major advantages over blue-red in the mirror. I think actually blue-red might even be favored, but Teferi is a very strong card, so we can resolve one of those. Then that is definitely a pretty big advantage for us. Alright, this hand is solid. We'll keep. Double on Nice is not great, but 3 lands, Mystical Dispute to Fairy is. So, and we do know that there's a reasonable chance we can convert these on Nices, because we know about Lutri. We've seen Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and I'm sure they play some other spells. Could represent Remand there, but I don't know if it's really worth it or not. They did burn us out last game, so Shocking isn't free. And getting a chance to play that land tapped is pretty nice. Search for Azcanta. This seems like a perfect spot for us to Mystical Dispute and then jam to Fairy. So that's what we're going to do. If they have their 1-0 Force of Negation, then they have the 1-0 Force of Negation. And there's not much you can do about that. I think we can safely plus here. Magmatic Sinkhole would be a little bit punishing, but they would have to have a fetch land, and they do not. But also, the ability to play Astrolabe and then minus on Astrolabe is pretty big next turn. Okay, we can answer that. So here's what we'll do. We'll go Astrolabe. And then, interesting. So now we have the combo, and it's currently protected by our Teferi. So I'm going to continue to plus to try to get our Teferi out of range of any of the removal. Being able to protect the combo seems like a pretty good priority to have here. I keep forgetting if our opponent just has literally land Lightning Bolt, they can Lutri and kill our Teferi here. Lutri is pretty powerful in that sense. So hopefully they don't have it. As then we'd be getting no value. Our opponent considering their options, and they decide to go for Venser. Okay. So they're going to bounce our Teferi. So we can Omthanize it. We can play Teferi and bounce their Venser. There's a lot of plays we have here. Let's fetch a Snow Plains. I think I like the play of Teferi plus Omthanize. Plussing Teferi again. Or we could minus Teferi here. Oh, they can't Lutri or Teferi, that's right, because with Lightning Bolt, if you cast Lightning Bolt, you don't have ability to play Lutri in response because of Teferi's static ability. So Teferi does a good job of shutting down Lutri, and keeping it at a high loyalty should remain a priority. It only dies to Magmatic Sinkhole here. A plane overhead. I'm recording outside today. It's a super nice day here in California, which is where I live. And I thought I'd just take a time to, take a lawn chair outside and just enjoy. Our opponent opts a card to the bottom and is now paying costs. Oh man, do they draw the Sinkhole? That'd be pretty good for them. They did draw the Sinkhole. All right. I guess now it's anyone's game. They have a Grim Lavamancer. We draw Dispute. So we could go for Saheeli here and just plus to Scry and look for a land with the idea that if we're able to find the land, then we'll have the combo with a Mystical Dispute backup. Although we don't really technically have the combo because of the fact that Grim Lavamancer, if they're able to put one card into the graveyard, is able to shoot Saheeli mid combo, which stops the combo. So unless they play a 6-drop here, Saheeli is still a good planeswalker to have in play, and having a Mystical Dispute never hurts either. I'm just going to keep plussing here. And let's go for a Feldar Guardian. I don't think I'll blink Saheeli, honestly. With the Grim Lavamancer in play, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Unless our opponent goes for some interesting play here. I think I'll just blink Astrolabe and get some value. Our opponent Logic Knot X equals 2. Well, we're actually okay. First of all, there's nothing we can do about that, but also we're fine with that as it takes a card out of their graveyard. So I think overall happy with that exchange. They fact or fiction. We definitely have to dispute that. So here we could minus Saheeli on Astrolabe. That's one possibility. Our opponent also doesn't have very many islands, so we could consider trying to play Yorion and even potentially uh, bouncing this on thin ice to exile Grim Lavamancer and give them back Magus of the Moon. Seems reasonable. Could also just go for let's plus Saheeli to start. See what's on top. Island. Huh. Do we want more mana? I don't think we want to actively look for more lands. If we happen to draw another land after that, we're not upset about it, but I think actively looking for lands there is a mistake. So we know our opponent did not draw land necessarily, or they're holding it at least, but it could just very well be lightning bolt, something like that. I think Yorion's a pretty safe play here. Well, let's just take it slow and go for a Narset here. First of all, they may have a counterspell, and that would be enough to get the counterspell from them. They have Deprive, bouncing Mystic Sanctuary. Okay. So next turn, we know that we're probably safe to go for Yorion. So my guess is they're going to put Deprive back on top. Our opponent attacks with Lavamancer. Does that mean that they drew? Did they draw something, or what's going on here? Chandra. They remove our Saheeli. Fair enough. So let's free their Magus of the Moon, as it's not doing a whole lot. And in exchange for that, we'll get to capture their Grim Lavamancer. They'll get to put one emblem on us before we're able to attack the Chandra with our Yorion. We know that, but we know about Deprive, and we know that they have Lutri. Let's go ahead and start by attacking their Chandra. And then we'll see what they're willing to let us resolve. I think I'll opt first. Fairy is a good one. Not one that I want to play this turn, I don't think. So I think we can pretty safely race our opponent. The question is, how do we want to go about this? If I just jam the Jace here, Lutri costs blue or red, so they could still play Lutri. I think let's jam the Jace here and force them to use their Deprive now. Because of Magus of the Moon, they cannot get more value out of Mystic Sanctuary. So using the Magus of the Moon to work against them, basically. I guess bouncing Teleria West gives them some value if they want to transmute. They bounce Mystic Sanctuary anyways. Maybe they have plans to remove their own Magus of the Moon from play. Our opponent has the Royal Scions. Pretty strong here. If you're going to try to race, which it seems like they might be. But we will get to make some pretty strong plays this turn. So let's start by Royal Scions Ultimate's at 8, so we can race. So we'll start by attacking them. Oh, oops, I tapped too much mana. Then we'll play the Felidar Guardian. We can start to loop those. Do we want to play the Omen of the Sea now, actually? I think there's definitely an argument to play Omen of the Sea if I'm going to be... Okay, so we can wait first, because what we can do is we can stack these triggers to draw first and then Omen of the Sea. So we have a better idea of what we want. Our opponent might just play Lutri. Yeah, that makes sense. Remand. All right, now let's Omen of the Sea. Looking for something like Lightning Bolt would be very strong here. I think Force of Negation is good enough. This time the question becomes, do I want to bounce Felidar Guardian or not? If I don't bounce it, then it lets me block. If I do bounce it, then I'd have to exile Yorion from play. Or, so it wouldn't happen until next turn. I think it's a little bit slow, and I think we have enough card advantage as is. I think instead what we're focusing now is being able to win the race in time. And I think that for that reason, we'll just leave this back. Having the Force of Negation is great here. It means that any spell our opponent could draw is going to be most likely a blank unless they have some powerful or impactful creature. But otherwise, we can just block. So I believe we want to draw first and then preordain. Narset's fine, but it's just not what we're looking for here. Saheeli is what we're looking for. We'll start with Teferi. And if our opponent doesn't respond to this, then we just win. All right. We will pick up game 2. Our opponent wants to make us play it out. Always yes. Always yield. This is all unnecessary. I should stop. Gotta close the game out. All attacking our opponent. All right. Going to game three. We have a little less time on the clock than I'd like, but we can still play fast and pretty easily finish. Um, I don't think I saw anything that makes me want to change how I sideboarded. I still like having some number of Onthanice and Pat's Exile to answer my opponent's creatures, especially after they showed us the Venser, they showed us the Magus. I think all of those cards are cards that deserve having answers in our deck for. Um, it's possible Lightning Helix is better than an Onthanice, though, so let's make that switch. Lightning Helix being able to go face target planeswalkers, both are qualities that make it more enticing, I'd say. All right. I'll keep this hand. Gonna try to play this one a little bit faster. Looking to get the Triome with this land, most likely, so that we have red and blue. This is our opponent's big chance to play a threat, what they would think would be under our counter spells, or under our force negations at least, but I guess that doesn't really make a lot of sense because we could still be representing Remand, and if we have force negation, we can just pitch a blue card anyways. Both these cards are good, although I guess now we do have to be a little bit concerned about mana screw. So maybe I didn't want to draw both of them. But if we're able to convert this Remand on a spell, then it should be very good for us. I would Remand basically anything here, just to get the extra draw, and have a chance to stick a threat of my own. Definitely excited to Remand Jace the Mind Sculptor. Again, I could have Force Negationed it, but I'm looking to find a land, and also the upside of being able to resolve. Oops. Resolving Teferi here is pretty big. We'll plus this turn, and double Force Negation backup should ensure that our Teferi is able to live, and then next turn we can minus on Omen of the Sea if we don't find a land. I definitely like our position here, but things could go wrong pretty quickly. Narset. I think we should counter that because we have double counters. Uh, Suspends Ancestral Vision. Well, I'm not even sure the game's going to go that long, but if it does, then that's okay. We'll plus. We'll play Saheeli. We will plus Saheeli. We'll bottom. And I think we should have this game won. Between having the Force of Negation and the Teferi in play, it should be really hard for our opponent to interact with us and stop our combo here. This game worked out about as well as we could have hoped. Our opponent jammed Expensive Threat on their turn 4, and we were able to remand it, which allowed us to play our own big threat. That's part of the reason why you don't just want to jam your expensive threats like that. Maybe our opponent's thinking they're going to be able to Lutri here, but Teferi is going to say no to that. So we will let this Lightning Bolt resolve as it doesn't do anything on its own. Our opponent says whoops in the chat. I always forget as well. Yeah, companions aren't that busted. They don't ignore the rules of the game. So we'll let that bolt resolve. And if they don't have any follow-up to that, then we win. Mendelian Click. Okay. Luckily, we have the Mystical Disputer. That actually would have been one of the few cards that was able to stop us there. Through Force and Negation. We just have it all. I'm going to see on the bottom. Put Mystical Dispute on top. I guess we might as well minus on our Omen of the Sea first, right? Just to make sure we have the Dispute in hand. I mean, there's nothing they can do. All right, and we win. So we are 2-0 in this league.
Welcome to round 3 of this league with our Yorion Saheeli snow build. On the draw, I think this hand's a keep. We have a cantrip, which means we're going to have 4 looks at a second land, and then if we hit a second land, we have Remand and Omen of the Sea. The only risk with this hand is if we're up against some type of aggro deck. City Brass makes me think it's ad nauseum. Alright, we do draw a land. So because it's ad nauseum, it looks like it's going to be less likely that we have to fetch red. So I think I'm going to probably fetch white. So I'm probably going to fetch a Steam Vents here so we can opt, as I want to be able to dig towards Force Negation. Alright, Darkslick Shores basically confirms we are up against ad nauseum. I think this matchup probably tends to be interesting. Island is interesting. Obviously, we'd rather get a white source, but we do want to secure a land. But because I think we have Omen of the Sea, I think we can bottom the island here. Do we want to play Astrolabe or Omen of the Sea here? I think we want to play Omen of the Sea on our opponent's end step. Holding up Remand could be relevant here if they play something like Phyrexian Unlife and we decide we want to remand it. But if they play Unlife, I think that's actually a great spot to jam Teferi and bounce the Unlife back to our opponent's hand. They do play Unlife. Alright. So we're going to Omen of the Sea and dig pretty hard for a white source. Should be able to find one with 4 looks. We will bottom both of those. They are redundant. All right, we miss. So this was the risk. I think we'll play Astrolabe here, because we could hit Force of Negation, but also we could hit a land, and we need to eventually play Astrolabe, and I think next turn is probably the safest turn we have. Let's leave 1 mana up. I think discarding a Saheeli Rai is probably, or we probably should discard it on Thin Ice, honestly. But I think that leaving the 1 mana up allows us to represent more that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to represent, and makes our opponent less inclined. Say if they had something like ad nauseum, like a land plus Simian Spirit Guide, let's say. Oh, that is a combo our opponent can play also. Yes. So because they had Unlife, they don't lose the game. And then they can deck themselves with Spoils of the Vault, and then Thassa's Oracle wins. So we lose. Yeah, because if we were to bolt Oracle, they still have 0 cards in library. It doesn't matter. Yep. Okay. We will bring in our 4 Dispute. We will cut the On Thin Ice for sure. We'll cut probably all 4 Path to Exile as well. And then we can definitely bring in these Abrades as a way to hit Pentad Prism, as well as Lotus Bloom sometimes if you can get them in an inopportune spot. And the question is, do we want Ashiok or Blood Moon for our last slot? Ashiok has the upsides of sometimes you can start milling them and actually hit a lot of their relevant threats. But Blood Moon has the upside of potentially locking them out of the game, and I think I want Blood Moon more. And I'm also going to consider cutting this Lightning Helix for a Blood Moon as well. Maybe I should just be cutting all 3 Lightning Bolts for the Ashioks. That could be definitely reasonable. All right, this is a very good hand for the matchup. Force of Negation is definitely a really key player in the matchup. And Mystical Dispute's also very solid. Let's see if we can find a Teferi here. Teferi is sweet because it stops their Veil of Summers, it stops their Pact of Negations, and in this case it's going to let us bounce their Pentad Prism. It also makes our Force of Negations a lot more effective because they're guaranteed to counter whatever we try to counter if we have Teferi in play. We'll get a Hollowed Fountain here. I am looking at this hand. I'm thinking that Ashiok would have been very nice to have instead of the Lightning Bolt, so we'll probably make that change if we do manage to make it to game number 3. Teferi also shuts off Suspended Lotus Blooms, so it's a really important card in the matchup. Our opponent has an Unlife, which has some relevance against us, but also not a ton right now. If they do go for something where they would be to lose the game effectively, like if they were to ad nauseum here, then we would actually let it resolve because if they deck them, okay, so they have Thoughtseize. So there are definitely a couple things we could do here. I'm leaning towards Cryptic Counter Draw. And if they go for a spoils, then we do have to counter it, though, is the downside to that play. They might just replay Pentad Prism, which is okay. We'll just counter their key spells because we can. So that land, the fetch land here, actually secretly lets us hold up double Force of Negation because we can hard cast the first one, and then we can fetch Mystic Sanctuary, put Force of Negation on top, Omen of the Sea, and then pay the alternative cost for the second one. So, actually pretty important to hit that land drop there. We're just going to continue to try to control the game until we can get to a point where we feel comfortable resolving a threat to take over. With Teferi in play, we have a lot less pressure to actually implement some type of clock. Okay, so they Veil of Summer here. We can't let that resolve. So we're going to Force a Negation it. Our opponent may just go for it here. You can't really blame them. They also may just have another Ad Nauseam ready to go, which is why they feel so confident with this one. Blood Moon's fantastic here. So we'll do it this way. We'll counter this Ad Nauseam, and then we'll play Blood Moon. And that should be game. Let's keep Saheeli over Mystical Dispute, as Saheeli is actually a clock. Our opponent hates Teferi. Don't we all? Alright, we'll play Blood Moon first, so that we actually have red mana to cast Saheeli. Alright, and they scoop. We're going to bring in the Ashiok's, additional cards to pitch, and Lightning Bolt doesn't seem to be that relevant in the matchup. I think generally racing is not how we're going to win. We're either going to win by controlling the game or by combo killing them. And Lightning Bolt doesn't really play into either of those plans. They don't have any really relevant creatures that we want to remove. Boss's Oracle's main value is from its trigger. I guess if you remove it with that on the stack, but I don't think that's worth it, as it's a little bit too narrow, and Ashiok actually probably has greater applications. This hand's a bit awkward, but I think it's a keep. Having the Mystic Sanctuary in hand is not great, but if we draw one fetch land, then we'll be in great shape. And Astrolabe plus Blood Moon's a very good combination to have. Ad Nauseam doesn't play many basics, usually only one or two. and so that makes our opponent heavily reliant on their artifact mana, and that means we can either put a premium on countering their artifact mana, or we can just counter their actual spells because they're usually not able to cast as many spells under Blood Moon. Their spells are very mana intensive. Flooded Strand is good. Our opponent goes for Sleight of Hand. And suspends Lotus Bloom. Okay. Force of Negation is a great draw. So we could have played the tapped Mystic Sanctuary there as a way to guarantee that we were able to unlife. I think we'll remand this. The reason I think there's value in remanding this here is because you want to really strain your opponent's mana so to the point where they have to have multiple sources of artifact mana effectively. So they need white and they need black to combo off. They need white for either Angel's Grace or Phyrexian Unlife, and they need black to cast Ad Nauseam. So if you're able to counter or keep both those pieces off the board prior to resolving a Blood Moon, then it's very effective because something like Lotus Bloom isn't enough for them here. We'll see, they may just have to pact that. They don't. Okay. So now I think that it's very reasonable for us to pick a fight over this Lotus Bloom next turn, and then our opponent will just have no mana. And even something like Pentad Prism is ineffective now because all they have is mountains. If they do draw one of their like single basics, then obviously the plan gets a little bit less effective, but that's not something that you really count on normally. So I believe Lotus Bloom is going to come off suspend this turn, and we can attempt to counter it by hard casting Force of Negation. I think that's the best play here. Alternatively, if we let the Lotus Bloom resolve, then we can fight over their payoff spell. But I think that the risk in that is that you have a little bit less agency. Oh, interesting though. So if we hard cast Force Negation, then we don't have Mystical Dispute up, which is a bit of a risk. All right, I changed my mind. We're gonna let the Lotus Bloom resolve. Our opponent is still one color source away from actually being able to go off. And this also makes draws like Abrade more live to destroy the Lotus Bloom. And we do have Omen of the Sea, so we're not wasting our mana completely. Looks like our opponent is going to pass. I wonder if they're going to go for an Ad Nauseam here. It might be reasonable just for them to cast Ad Nauseam as like a draw spell and see if they can draw like 5 or 6 cards. But that isn't as good, obviously, on our turn as it would be otherwise. Okay, so Saheeli means that we have the combo. So we're going to take that to put our opponent on a very short clock. And then we are going to... Okay, so... We play Feldar first because Saheeli is one of our blue cards. And we'll blink the Omen of the Sea to hopefully find another one. But Saheeli wouldn't necessarily guarantee that we find another blue card. So that's why we're doing it this way. Worth noting, we were... Okay, so we'll take the Narset. We were one land off of just being able to combo off in one turn, but we weren't quite there. But I still think that we're fine from this position. Second dispute's pretty good, I think. Our opponent packs. So I think this is okay with us. And the reason why is they're going to have to use their Lotus Bloom to cast Angel's Grace, which means they're using it for white, which means that they're going to be very far away from being able to combo. Alternatively, if we were to double dispute here, or I guess we could just cast Force of Negation. And then if they can't Veil, so they'd have to have another pact. So let's just do that. I think that's also safe in this situation. Save target, always yield, always yes. I don't think it actually works, unfortunately, on MTGO like it should. But it does make things a little bit faster when you have the yield on at least. You can use 3 as a hotkey, and that makes things go a lot quicker than always clicking the OK. 3 is the hotkey to say yes. So that's, I have yield on, so it asks me, do I want to use Felidar Guardian? And I click 3. Our opponent may just have a they may just have an Angel's Grace here. That may be what they're going to cast. But that's fine. We'll put them down to 1, and they shouldn't be able to combo off, and then we'll just go off again next turn. So our last blink will be, we'll blink a island so that we're holding up Mystic Sanctuary, or Mystical Dispute. Plenty of time on the clock. We'll make a couple more than 20 in case they have any weird tricks. We'll do one more, and then we'll blink the island with that one. And that should show that they basically have to use the Angel's Grace. Unless our opponent boards Rakdos Charm. In which case we just got. Yep, Angel's Grace. Our opponent goes to 1. Yeah, so Saheeli plussing doesn't actually do anything there. If Saheeli made the opponent lose life, then that would actually have been a winning line. It would just be to hold up the Saheeli activation. But it does not, so it's not actually a play that does anything. Then we go back down to 1 cat. But that 1 cat should be enough to bring us across the finish line. Pentad Prism, Sunburst 1. Oh, Phyrexian Unlife. Okay. The game drags on. We'll put Cryptic on top. Play Wall of Omens. Draw. Attack our opponent. Oh, we're just going to Cryptic Command bounce the Phyrexian Unlife. Gotta get your beats in with the Felder Guardian first, though.